Have you ever sent a text to the wrong person and felt your heart drop? Imagine if that text was, "I love you," and it went to your boss. That's exactly what happened to Mark, and what his boss whispered when she showed up at his door changed everything. If this story touches your heart, please like this video and subscribe to see more life-changing moments like this one. Mark Collins stared at his phone in horror, the blood draining from his face. His thumb hovered over the screen as if he could somehow reach into the digital ether and pull back the message he'd just sent. But it was too late. The text, 3 simple words meant for his daughter, had been delivered to his boss, Catherine Reynolds. "I love you. Have a great day at school, sweetheart." It was a message he sent to Emma every morning, a small ritual that had become sacred after losing his wife 3 years ago. But this morning, with Emma sick at home and him rushing to prepare for an important presentation, he'd tapped the wrong contact. His boss's name sat just above his daughter's in his recent messages. Mark dropped his phone on the kitchen counter as if it had burned him. "No, no, no," he muttered, running his hands through his already disheveled hair. At 38, being a single father to a 10-year-old while working as a senior account manager at Reynolds Marketing was challenging enough without accidentally texting declarations of love to his intimidating boss. Catherine Reynolds wasn't just any boss. She was brilliant, demanding, and notoriously private. At 42, she had built her marketing firm from nothing into one of the most respected agencies in the city. Employees admired her sharp mind but feared her sharper tongue. In the 2 years Mark had worked for her, he'd never seen her so much as smile at a personal anecdote. And now he'd just texted her, "I love you." "Dad?" Emma's voice called weakly from upstairs. "Can I have some more medicine?" Mark took a deep breath, trying to center himself. "Coming, sweetheart." He grabbed the children's fever reducer and a glass of water, forcing himself to focus on what mattered most, his daughter. The work situation would have to wait. Emma looked small and fragile in her bed, surrounded by stuffed animals. Her normally rosy cheeks were pale, and her dark curls, so like her mother's, stuck to her forehead with sweat. "Here you go, Em." He helped her sit up to take the medicine. "How are you feeling?" "Still yucky," she mumbled, falling back against her pillows. "Are you going to work?" Mark checked his watch. The presentation was in 2 hours, and he still needed to finalize his notes. "I have to, honey. Mrs. Garcia will be here in 15 minutes to look after you, okay?" Emma nodded, her eyes already drifting closed. Mark kissed her forehead, relieved that her fever seemed to be coming down. "I love you, Emma." "Love you too, Dad," she whispered. As he headed downstairs, his phone buzzed. With a sense of dread, he checked the screen. "Catherine, Mark, I think you sent that message to the wrong person." His fingers trembled as he typed a response. "Mark, Ms. Reynolds, I am so incredibly sorry. That was meant for my daughter. Please accept my sincere apologies for the confusion." The 3 dots appeared, showing she was typing, then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. "Catherine, no need to apologize. See you at the Hartman presentation." Mark exhaled. Her response was professional, almost dismissive. Maybe this wouldn't be as awkward as he feared. Still, he dreaded facing her in person. By the time Mrs. Garcia arrived, a kind, grandmotherly neighbor who had been a godsend since Lisa's death, Mark was already running late. He gave her instructions about Emma's medicine, kissed his sleeping daughter goodbye, and rushed out the door. The Hartman presentation was crucial. If Reynolds Marketing landed this account, it would mean stability for Mark, the kind of stability Emma needed. Since losing Lisa to cancer, he'd struggled to balance his career with being a present father. This account could mean regular hours, better pay, and maybe even the ability to finally move from their small apartment to a house with a yard where Emma could play. The office was buzzing when he arrived. Catherine's assistant, Jen, gave him a strange look as he hurried past. "She wants to see you," Jen called after him. Before the presentation. Mark's stomach clenched. "Thanks," he managed, dropping his briefcase at his desk and straightening his tie. He'd hoped to avoid a one-on-one conversation about the text, but apparently, that wasn't going to happen. Catherine's office was at the end of the hall, glass-walled but with blinds that were currently closed, unusual for her. Mark knocked tentatively. "Come in," her voice called. Catherine sat behind her desk, reviewing documents. She didn't look up immediately when he entered, and Mark stood awkwardly, unsure whether to speak first. Finally, she raised her eyes to his. "Mark." "Ms. Reynolds, about that text." She held up a hand. "I understand it was meant for your daughter. It's forgotten." Her tone was clipped, professional. "I wanted to discuss the Hartman presentation. I've reviewed your proposal, and I think we should emphasize the digital integration more heavily. They're traditional, but they need to understand how our approach will bring them into the modern market." Relief washed over Mark. She was all business, as usual. "I agree completely. I've prepared some additional slides on that aspect." For the next 15 minutes, they discussed strategy. Catherine was focused, insightful, and completely normal, as if the morning's text had never happened. By the time they headed to the conference room, Mark had almost convinced himself the incident was behind them. The presentation went brilliantly. Mark found his rhythm, and even Catherine seemed impressed, nodding approvingly at several points. When the Hartman executives left, promising to be in touch soon, the entire team felt confident they'd secured the account. "Good work, everyone," Catherine announced. "Mark, excellent presentation." She turned and walked back to her office without another word. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and follow-up emails. Mark called Mrs. Garcia twice to check on Emma, who was feeling slightly better but still feverish. By 6 o'clock, he was exhausted but satisfied with the day's work. As he packed up to leave, his phone rang. It was Emma's school. "Mr. Collins? This is Principal Winters. I'm calling about Emma's absence today." "Yes, she has a fever. I kept her home." "I understand, but this is her third absence this month. I'm concerned about her falling behind. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting to discuss some support options?" Mark's heart sank. Emma had missed several days recently, first with a cold, then for Lisa's death anniversary, and now this fever. He knew she was struggling academically, but between work and managing their home, he barely had time to help with homework, let alone arrange tutoring. "Of course," he said, trying to keep the weariness from his voice. "I'll check my calendar and get back to you." As he hung up, he noticed Catherine standing in his doorway. How long had she been there? Had she overheard his conversation? "Heading out?" she asked, her expression unreadable. "Yes, my daughter's sick. I need to get home." Catherine nodded. The Hartman team called. "They want to meet again tomorrow to discuss details. I'll need you here early." Mark hesitated. Mrs. Garcia couldn't watch Emma 2 days in a row, she had her own family commitments. "I'll be here," he said, knowing he'd have to figure something out. Maybe Emma would be well enough for school. Maybe he could find another sitter. Maybe. The weight of single parenthood pressed down on him as he drove home. Lisa had been the organized one, the planner. 3 years later, he still felt like he was barely keeping his head above water. Emma was on the couch when he arrived, looking slightly better but still pale. Mrs. Garcia had made chicken soup, and the apartment was warm and smelled comforting. "She's had a rough day," Mrs. Garcia said quietly as she gathered her things. "The fever spiked again this afternoon, but it's coming down now. She's been asking for you." Mark thanked her profusely, pressing an extra $20 into her hand despite her protests. After she left, he sat beside Emma on the couch, pulling her close. "Hey, bug. Feeling any better?" Emma nodded against his chest. "A little. Did you have a good day at work?" "I did. The presentation went well." He stroked her hair, noticing it needed washing. One more thing to add to his mental list. "Are you hungry?" Mrs. Garcia made soup. "I already had some. Can we just watch a movie?" They settled in to watch Emma's favorite animated film, one they'd seen dozens of times. Mark tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting to tomorrow's meeting, Emma's school absences, the pile of laundry waiting to be done, and the bills he needed to pay. By the time the credits rolled, Emma was asleep against him, her breathing deep and even. Carefully, he carried her to bed, tucking her in among her stuffed animals. "I love you, Emma," he whispered, kissing her forehead. Her fever seemed to have broken, finally. Back in the living room, Mark collapsed onto the couch, too tired to even make himself dinner. He pulled out his laptop to review his notes for tomorrow's meeting, but the words blurred before his eyes. Just as he was about to give up and go to bed, his phone buzzed with a text. "Catherine, is your daughter feeling better?" Mark stared at the message in surprise. In 2 years, Catherine had never once asked about his personal life. "Mark, she's improving, thank you for asking." "Catherine, good. About tomorrow's meeting, I know it's short notice. If you need to work from home, we can arrange for you to join virtually." Mark blinked at the screen. Catherine Reynolds, offering flexibility? It was unprecedented. "Mark, that's very kind, but I should be able to make it in. Thank you for the consideration. Catherine, the offer stands if you need it. Good night, Mark." "Mark, good night, Ms. Reynolds." He set his phone down, puzzled by the exchange. It was so unlike Catherine to show concern for an employee's personal situation. Perhaps the accidental text had humanized him in her eyes somehow. The next morning, Emma's fever was gone, but she still looked exhausted. Mark called the school to report her absence, wincing as he imagined Principal Winter's disapproval. Then he called Mrs. Garcia, who regretfully confirmed she couldn't watch Emma today. "I'm sorry, Mark," she said. "My daughter needs me to watch my grandson." Mark ran through his mental list of backup sitters, but no one was available on such short notice. He was about to call Catherine to take her up on the virtual meeting offer when Emma spoke up. "Dad, I can stay by myself. I'm 10 now." Mark hesitated. Emma was mature for her age, but leaving her alone all day when she'd been sick? "I don't know, Em. Please. I'll just rest and watch TV. I promise I won't open the door for anyone. You can call and check on me." After much deliberation and a list of rules, don't use the stove, keep the doors locked, call immediately if you feel worse, Mark reluctantly agreed. He set her up on the couch with snacks, drinks, her tablet, and the TV remote, making sure her phone was fully charged. "I'll call every hour," he promised, kissing the top of her head. "And I'll try to come home early." The Hartman meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Mark arrived at the office by 8:30, determined to be fully prepared. He called Emma twice before the meeting, relieved to find her sounding cheerful and watching her favorite show. Catherine stopped by his desk at 9:45. "Ready?" "Absolutely," Mark said, gathering his materials. Then, surprising himself, he added, "Thank you again for the offer to work remotely. My daughter's feeling better, but she's home alone today. My regular sitter wasn't available." Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. Concern? Understanding? "If you need to leave early, that's fine. Family comes first." Before Mark could respond to this unexpected statement, she was already walking toward the conference room. The meeting with the Hartman team went even better than the previous day. By noon, contracts were being drawn up, and celebratory handshakes were exchanged all around. Catherine actually smiled, a rare sight that transformed her usually stern face. "Congratulations, team," she said as the Hartman executives left. "This is a significant win for us." As the others filed out, Catherine held Mark back. "Good work today. You should head home to your daughter now." "Thank you," Mark said, genuinely touched by her consideration. "I appreciate your understanding." Catherine nodded, her expression softening slightly. "Being a single parent isn't easy. I know that firsthand." Mark stared at her in surprise. In 2 years, Catherine had never mentioned having children. She was intensely private about her personal life, and office rumors suggested she was married to her work, with no time for family. Before he could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving him with questions he couldn't ask. When Mark arrived home, he found Emma asleep on the couch, surrounded by snack wrappers and juice boxes. Relief washed over him at the sight of color in her cheeks again. He quietly cleaned up around her, then sat in the armchair across from the couch, watching her sleep and thinking about Catherine's unexpected comment. Single parent. The words echoed in his mind. Was Catherine a single mother? He'd never seen pictures of children in her office, never heard her mention family commitments. Then again, he realized, he'd never really asked. Emma stirred and opened her eyes. "Dad? You're home early." "The meeting went well, so I got to leave." He moved to sit beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. Can I go to school tomorrow? I miss my friends." "If you still feel good in the morning, absolutely." They spent the afternoon playing board games and making dinner together, a rare weekday treat. As Mark helped Emma with her missed schoolwork later that evening, his phone buzzed with a text. "Catherine, the Hartman contract is signed. Congratulations." Mark smiled, typing back a quick thank you. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, "Mark, I appreciate your understanding today. It meant a lot." "Catherine, I meant what I said. Family comes first." Mark stared at the message, wondering if he dared ask the question on his mind. Before he could decide, another text came through. "Catherine, my son is 16 now. I raised him alone since he was 4. It gets easier, but it's never easy." Mark felt a surge of connection. All this time, they'd shared this fundamental experience, and he'd never known. "Mark, thank you for sharing that. It helps to know someone understands." Emma is 10. Her mother passed away 3 years ago. "Catherine, I'm sorry for your loss. My divorce was difficult, but I can't imagine." "Well, you're doing a good job, Mark. I see how hard you work, both at the office and as a father." The conversation continued, tentative at first, then flowing more naturally as they shared the challenges of single parenthood. Catherine told him about her son, Alex, a talented musician who was already looking at colleges. Mark shared stories about Emma's passion for science and her struggle to adjust after losing her mother. By the time they said goodnight, something had shifted. Catherine was no longer just his intimidating boss, she was a person with her own struggles, her own story. The next morning, Emma was well enough for school, much to her delight. Mark dropped her off with a promise to pick her up on time, then headed to the office, feeling lighter than he had in months. Catherine nodded to him as he passed her office, professional as always, but there was a new warmth in her eyes. Throughout the day, they interacted as they normally would, discussing projects, attending meetings, but the tension that had always existed between them had dissipated. At lunch, Mark found himself alone in the break room with Catherine. After a moment of comfortable silence, she spoke. "Alex had a recital last night. I recorded part of it." She hesitated, then held out her phone, showing a video of a teenage boy playing the violin with remarkable skill. "He's incredible," Mark said, genuinely impressed. "You must be very proud." "I am." Catherine's smile was small but real. It hasn't been easy, but moments like these make it worthwhile. I know exactly what you mean, Mark replied, thinking of Emma's face when she mastered a difficult science concept or conquered a fear. Over the next few weeks, a cautious friendship developed between them. They never discussed the accidental, "I love you" text again, but it had become a turning point, the moment that cracked the professional veneer and allowed them to see each other as people first, boss and employee second. Catherine began to implement more family-friendly policies at the company, flexible working hours, remote work options, even an emergency childcare service for employees. The office culture shifted subtly, becoming more understanding of the challenges faced by working parents. Mark found himself able to balance work and family more effectively, and Emma's school attendance improved. One Friday afternoon, as Mark was preparing to leave early for Emma's science fair, Catherine stopped by his desk. "Good luck to Emma tonight," she said. "Alex mentioned he might like to see a science fair. Would it be inappropriate if we attended?" Mark was surprised but pleased. "Not at all. Emma would be thrilled to have more supporters there." That evening, as Emma nervously stood beside her project on renewable energy, Mark spotted Catherine and a tall, lanky teenager entering the school gymnasium. He waved them over, watching as Emma's eyes widened at the introduction. "You're my dad's boss?" she asked Catherine, looking between them curiously. "I am," Catherine replied with a smile. "And this is my son, Alex. We heard you're quite the scientist." Emma beamed, immediately launching into an explanation of her project. Alex, despite being 6 years older, listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that made Emma stand taller with pride. As the children talked, Catherine turned to Mark. "She's remarkable. So poised and intelligent." "Thank you," Mark said, feeling the familiar mixture of pride and grief that often struck him at Emma's milestones. "Lisa would be so proud of her." Catherine's expression softened. "I'm sure she would be. And of you, too." The science fair became the first of many casual interactions outside of work. Alex, it turned out, was excellent at math and offered to help Emma when she struggled with her homework. The four of them occasionally shared meals, went to movies, or spent afternoons in the park. Catherine and Mark found comfort in sharing the challenges of single parenthood with someone who truly understood. 6 months after the accidental text, Reynolds Marketing held its annual company picnic. As employees and their families enjoyed the summer day, Mark watched Emma and Alex playing frisbee with other children. "They've become quite close," Catherine said, joining him with 2 glasses of lemonade. "They have," Mark agreed, accepting the drink gratefully. "Alex is a great influence on her. She talks about him constantly." Catherine smiled, watching her son. "He says the same about Emma. It's been good for him to have someone to mentor. He's always been an old soul." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, enjoying the rare peace of watching their children happy and carefree. "I never thanked you," Catherine said suddenly. "For what?" "That text." She turned to look at him directly. "As embarrassing as it must have been for you, it changed things. Made me realize I'd created a company culture that didn't truly support families, despite being a parent myself. Made me see you, all my employees, as whole people with lives outside the office." Mark nodded, understanding. "It was mortifying at the time, but I'm glad it happened. Not just for the company changes, but—" He hesitated, then continued, "It's been good, having someone who understands this journey." Catherine's expression softened. "It has." As the summer turned to fall, and fall to winter, the friendship between the two families deepened. Catherine and Mark maintained their professional relationship at work, but outside the office, they found themselves increasingly turning to each other for advice, support, and companionship. December brought Emma's first piano recital. She had started lessons only 3 months earlier but was determined to perform at the winter showcase. Mark sat nervously in the audience, Catherine and Alex beside him, as Emma walked to the piano, looking tiny and vulnerable in her new dress. She played a simple piece, making several mistakes but pushing through with determination. When she finished, she looked immediately to Mark, who was on his feet applauding, tears in his eyes. Catherine and Alex joined him, their support unwavering despite the imperfect performance. "She was so brave," Catherine said later, as they all went for ice cream to celebrate. "Just like her mom," Mark replied, watching Emma and Alex at the counter, debating flavor choices. Lisa was fearless about trying new things, even when she wasn't sure she'd succeed. Catherine studied his face. "You still miss her very much?" It wasn't a question, but Mark answered anyway. "Every day. But it's different now. In the beginning, the grief was all-consuming. Now, it's more like, carrying her with us as we move forward." Catherine nodded, understanding in her eyes. "That's how healing works, I think. Not forgetting or leaving behind, but integrating the loss into a new reality." As Christmas approached, Emma became fixated on the idea of a family holiday. "Can Catherine and Alex come for Christmas dinner?" she asked one evening as they decorated their small tree. Alex said they usually just order Chinese food and watch movies. Mark raised his eyebrows. "Did he? Well, I'd have to ask Catherine. She might have other plans." "Please ask her, Dad," Emma pleaded. "It would be so much more fun with them here." The truth was, Mark had been thinking the same thing. The prospect of another Christmas with just the two of them felt lonely in a way it hadn't before. Having Catherine and Alex in their lives had reminded him of what a family felt like, the easy conversations, shared meals, inside jokes, and mutual support. The next day at work, he approached Catherine's office with some trepidation. Despite their friendship, he felt suddenly nervous. "Emma has requested your presence for Christmas dinner," he said, trying to keep his tone light. "Apparently, Alex mentioned your tradition of Chinese food and movies." Catherine looked up from her computer, surprise evident on her face. "He did he? That boy talks too much." But she was smiling. "We wouldn't want to intrude on your family time." "You wouldn't be intruding," Mark said honestly. "Emma considers you and Alex family now." "And so do I," he added, surprising himself with the admission. Catherine's expression softened. "We feel the same way. We'd be honored to join you for Christmas." Christmas Eve arrived with a light snow that transformed the city into a winter wonderland. Mark and Emma spent the day cooking and preparing for their guests, the apartment filling with delicious smells and holiday music. When the doorbell rang at 6 o'clock, Emma raced to answer it, flinging the door open to reveal Catherine and Alex, arms laden with gifts and a homemade pie. "Merry Christmas!" Emma exclaimed, hugging them both before helping with their packages. The evening was everything Mark had hoped for, warm, joyful, and filled with laughter. They ate until they couldn't move, played board games, and exchanged gifts. Alex gave Emma a beginner's astronomy book, while Catherine had found a vintage science kit similar to one Lisa had given Emma years ago. "How did you know?" Mark asked quietly, touched by the thoughtful gift. "Emma mentioned it once," Catherine replied. "She said it was her favorite gift from her mother, but it was lost in your last move." As the evening wound down, Alex and Emma curled up on the couch watching a holiday movie, both fighting to stay awake. Mark and Catherine sat at the kitchen table, nursing cups of coffee and watching the snow fall outside the window. "Thank you for this," Catherine said softly. "It's been a long time since we had a real family Christmas." "Thank you for coming," Mark replied. "It's been wonderful having you both here." They fell into a comfortable silence, the only sounds the murmur of the television and the children's occasional laughter. "Mark," Catherine said finally, her voice hesitant. "There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." He turned to look at her, noting the unusual uncertainty in her expression. "What is it?" "I've been offered a position to open a new branch of the agency in Chicago." It would mean a significant promotion, more responsibility, more creative control. Mark felt his heart sink. That's wonderful. Congratulations. I haven't accepted yet, she continued, watching his face carefully. Alex is applying to colleges next year, and moving now would disrupt his final year of high school. And there are other considerations. What other considerations? Mark asked, though something in her eyes made him think he already knew. Catherine took a deep breath. The four of us, what we've built these past months. It matters to me. To Alex, too. More than a promotion. Mark reached across the table and took her hand. It matters to us, too. Very much. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. I'm going to decline the offer, Catherine said finally. Some opportunities are worth more than career advancement. On New Year's Eve, a week later, Catherine invited Mark and Emma to her home for the first time, a beautiful brownstone that somehow managed to be both elegant and comfortable. As midnight approached, the four of them stood on the rooftop terrace, watching the city lights below. 10, 9, 8. Alex and Emma counted down enthusiastically, sparklers in hand. As the city erupted in celebration at the stroke of midnight, Catherine turned to Mark. A year ago, I never could have imagined this, she said, her voice barely audible above the fireworks. What? Standing on your roof with your employee and his daughter? Mark teased gently. Catherine smiled. Finding a second chance at family. Mark looked at their children, laughing together as they wrote their names in the air with sparklers, then back at Catherine. Slowly, he reached for her hand. Is that what we're doing? Building a family? I think we might be, she replied softly. If you want to. Instead of answering, Mark leaned forward and kissed her gently. When they parted, Catherine's eyes were shining. Dad! Catherine! Look! Emma called, pointing to the sky where particularly spectacular fireworks were blooming. They turned, arms around each other, to watch with their children. As the colors reflected in Emma's delighted face, Mark felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This wasn't replacing what he'd lost with Lisa, nothing ever could. This was something new, something different, but equally precious. 3 months later, on a warm spring evening, Mark found himself working late at the office. Most employees had gone home, but light still spilled from Catherine's office. He knocked lightly on her door. Come in, she called. She looked up as he entered, her smile warming her entire face. I thought you'd left already. I wanted to finish the Johnson proposal, he explained, moving to sit across from her. And I wanted to ask you something. Catherine set aside her work, giving him her full attention. What is it? Mark took a deep breath. Emma's school has a father-daughter dance next Friday. She asked if you and Alex would come with us. Catherine's expression softened. Of course we will. But that's not really what you wanted to ask, is it? Mark smiled, caught. In the 9 months since his accidental text, he discovered that Catherine could read him remarkably well. No, it's not. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, setting it on the desk between them. Catherine's eyes widened. I know it hasn't been very long, Mark said quietly. But when you know, you know. Lisa taught me that life is too short to wait when something feels right. And this, us, our family, feels right. Catherine opened the box with trembling fingers to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Mark. I love you, he said, the words that had started everything now spoken intentionally, with certainty. Not by accident this time. I love you, Catherine. Tears filled her eyes as she stood and moved around the desk to him. I love you too, she whispered, pulling him to his feet. And yes. Yes to everything. Later that evening, they gathered their children to share the news. Emma squealed with delight, throwing her arms around Catherine, while Alex grinned and shook Mark's hand before pulling him into a hug. "Does this mean we'll all live together?" Emma asked excitedly. "Eventually," Mark answered, his arm around Catherine's waist. "We'll take things one step at a time." As they celebrated together, Mark thought about the text that had changed everything, a simple mistake that had opened the door to a new beginning. Sometimes, he reflected, the most beautiful journeys start with a wrong turn. 6 months later, on a perfect autumn day, Mark stood waiting at the altar, Alex beside him as best man. The small church was filled with friends, family, and colleagues, all smiling as the music began. Emma came down the aisle first, beaming in her junior bridesmaid dress, scattering flower petals with careful precision. And then Catherine appeared, radiant in a simple ivory gown, her eyes finding Mark's immediately. As she reached him, she leaned close and whispered, "Thank you for that text." Mark smiled, taking her hands in his. "Best mistake I ever made." The minister began the ceremony, but Mark barely heard the words, too caught up in the miracle of second chances. In the front row, Emma sat beside Alex, the siblings they had become in heart if not yet in law, watching with joy as their parents promised to love each other for the rest of their lives. Later, at the reception, as Mark and Catherine shared their first dance, he held her close and whispered, "I love you," in her ear, no mistake this time, but a promise, a celebration, a future. Catherine smiled up at him, her eyes shining with happiness. "I love you too," she whispered back. "Always." And as their children joined them on the dance floor, the four of them moving together in a circle of laughter and love, Mark knew that some mistakes aren't mistakes at all, they're the universe's way of leading us exactly where we need to be. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories about love, second chances, and the beautiful accidents that change our lives forever. Remember that sometimes our greatest blessings come from our most embarrassing moments, and that family can be found in the most unexpected places.